evening, everyone. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you, Jordan, Chelsea, and Susie, for helping me put the show together. If you're watching on YouTube, please share the show, comment Motion Pro, and if you're watching on Facebook, please share the show with your friends. I also want to thank our sponsors who make the show possible. Motion Pro, Vinco, Full Circle Racing, ReplicaMotorcycleParts.com, the International Motocross Museum, Racer X, Preston Petty Products, and of course we have our show supporters as well, the Moto Barn down in Virginia, and Mike Chamberlain. My guest tonight, I first met him a couple of years ago at the Langston Motorsports bike show, the annual bike show. And he was a young guy who was involved in Supercross and in motocross over the years. But what caught my attention was that he was very, very interested in vintage motocross as well. And he had a beautiful 1976 Honda there on display. We don't get the chance to talk to too many Supercross motocross riders who are presently racing. We talk to a lot of older guys, but we don't get to talk to a lot of younger people who are actually in the sport of vintage motocross as well. So it is my pleasure, without any further ado, to welcome my guest tonight, Mr. Coty Schock. Coty, thank you for joining me tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was just a couple of years ago that I saw you down at Langston's, and we didn't get a chance much to talk that day about how you became interested in the older bikes, but we all start somewhere. It's usually on a mini bike. Where did it all begin for you, Coty?
It started on it was an XR50, and then it was like an LT90 or four-wheeler. I don't know. My dad had both of them for me. We started off on the four-wheeler when I was still in diapers when I was 2, and he would put a string on the kill switch and let me go in a circle in the front yard. And anytime I got out of control, he would pull the string and it would shut off on me. And then not long after, I graduated to the XR50, and I was on the 50 the same time I was on a bicycle. And my dad would always, anytime he would cut the grass, he would tease me in the yard saying, haha, you can't catch me. And I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna get you. So I learned how to start it, and then I was chasing him around the yard when he was mowing the grass. Now, and that's kind of where
presently you're in North Carolina. Was that where all this was happening? Is that where you grew up?
No, I am originally from Delaware. I lived there until I was 21. And then I moved to California for about 4 years. And then now I've been in North Carolina, for the past year. So
so you're growing up on the little four-wheeler. You're getting on the two-wheelers now. How long before is it that you're actually on a track racing minis? At what age did you begin doing that?
So I did not even know about racing until I was 7. Oh. Yeah. Because dirt bikes in Delaware are not real. They weren't ever really a thing. Really small state. It's kind of like farmland in a way. Like it's more farming environment than any type of action sports. So I saw it on TV and I said, I want to do that. And then my dad got me a KX65, and we were racing when I was about 7 or 8. So that's where we started. It was March. I think it was March of 2006 was my very first race, that Blue Diamond MX.
Oh, okay. And how old were you at that point?
I believe I was like 8 at that time.
Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit, because you're obviously, you have a professional license now. You race Supercross, you race motocross, but there's got to be a bridge that has to be gapped between those years. What did you do as an amateur? Did you go through the ranks at Loretta Lynn's? What happened there?
I did go through the ranks. I was nothing special. I was always that fast local kid that would I'd win all the local races, but anytime I went to a national, it was never great. I never really had the equipment, and I never really had that little bit of luck that you need in racing. So I went to Loretta's about 5 or 6 times. 2009 being my first year when I was 11. That was the very first time I even tried. And then my last time was 2016 when I went pro. So I raced Loretta's in 2016, and the weekend after I raced pro at Unadilla in the 250 class. Amateur career, I never finished inside top 10 at Loretta's. Never did. I did it twice in a moto, and that was in 2016 in College Boy. But no, I didn't really have any spectacular amateur career. I wasn't on anyone's radar. I was just that local fast kid, and my parents were doing everything possible to keep me on a bike and potentially make my dream come true. And that's to be a professional motocross racer. So.
And you've done that, and we're going to get back to that in just a moment. But I found it very, very interesting, Coty, and it's something that I've been talking about for probably 5 or 6 years now. And when it comes to the growth of vintage motocross and keeping an interest in the older bikes, we need younger people like yourself who are interested in those bikes and interested in the history of the sport to get involved, much like Ryan Villapoto is now, much like Blake Wharton is. There are a few guys out there who are actually racing the older bikes. How did you get started with having an interest in the older bikes? How did you meet Norm Francis and Gary Chaplin? Tell me about that friendship, because they're really old school guys. I mean, they've even got a couple of years on me. So I was wondering how you met them and how you began to take an interest and begin to restore that beautiful 76 Honda CR250 that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, by the way. So I met Norm through my buddy Brock Urban, who is Billy Urban's son.
Yeah.
Which he's a legend himself. I mean, winning Hangtown back in the day on the Pook, that is just cool.
Yeah.
So Brock had a 1986 CR250. I think it was 86 or 89. And the head gasket went out on it, but it wasn't leaking out there. It just went bad. So it was causing the bike to run weird. And Billy told Brock, hey, call my buddy Norm. So Norm ended up only living about 1.5 miles away from us. And he came over, and that's when I met him. And I'm not going to lie. I was like, who is this old head just coming over here and diagnosing this thing so quick? And it was impressive. It really was impressive. And I was like, that dude seems like he knows a lot. And I mean, what he said to Brock was spot on, because that's what we replaced, and it was night and day. And then I kind of just kept in touch with Norm through Brock, because we would go over to his house and look at his builds. And I mean, Norm is into any type of racing. I mean, 3-wheelers to dirt bikes to
I mean, the guy is a phenomenal,
insane.
Yeah.
So
he's built some incredible buggies for Tommy Croft. I know he's restored a couple of bikes. I just saw quite a lineup last weekend, November 11th. We were at the Langston Motorsports Bike Show. I was the MC there, and Norm had a couple of DT1s. He had some Hodakas, a Hodaka road racer, and he and Gary Chaplin seemed to keep pretty busy with all that stuff. So you were certainly in good company there. How long did it take you guys to restore that Honda, and what was it like when you first rode it?
So that summer, I actually had gotten hurt racing Supercross. I had a full knee reconstruction. So during that summer, we actually built, I think it was like 7 to 8 vintage bikes. And for my bike personally, between Gary, Norm, and I, it took us a week and a half, which is mind blowing because
A week and a half to take the bike apart, rebuild everything, put it back together.
So actually it was already torn apart. So
Okay.
when I had my knee surgery, I would come over to Norm's house on my crutches and I'd just take apart the bike a day at a time, not rush it,
Right.
just to get me up and moving out of the house, blah, blah, blah. But the bike was actually torn apart for about 5 weeks, I would say.
Okay.
Easily. And we had like sent the frame out to go get powder coated already.
Mhm.
So a lot of the stuff was already sitting there, but it just
Yep.
wasn't like assembled.
Okay.
So as we start finishing like Norm's Mako build and Gary's Mako build at the time and Billy's Pook build with Norm's I feel silly when I don't know how to explain what the motorcycle is, but it's like a Briggs and Stratton engine on like the fat little, like, what are they, like 12-inch wheels? I don't even know. But so we were building those, and then my build came in very last. And
Okay.
we got all that done within a week and a half, and Gary and I actually split the cases, and he helped teach me how to honestly rebuild it. And we were looking up on Google like the schematics for the engine and putting the transmission back together, and that was interesting. We learned a lot, and honestly the whole build went together right the first time. We didn't rush it. We took like a whole day. Took a whole day to build the 250 Elsinore engine, and then everything else kind of just came together. It was cool.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more from Coty Schock. We'll be talking about his professional career and what he's got coming up for the 2024 season.
Motocross struck America, coming from Europe like a lightning bolt, striking the hearts and minds of people all across the country and the world. Battles of intense racing and cutting rivalries with loyalty to brands and heroes intensified as years of blood, sweat, and dirt flew through the minds of those memories of champions as they wrestled their machines through almost impossible tracks. But where are those past champions? And where are their bikes? Terry Good, an ex-pro motocross racer, has made it his life mission to honor these heroes and the bikes they rode to stardom. We raced, we rode, we lived and breathed motocross. Go back in time and relive those moments, now preserved for the first time ever in the world's first museum dedicated to the history of motocross. Our new building is in the gate. Help us get a great start and you can be part of history. Go to internationalmotocrossmuseum.org and become a part of our team.
To get over to the internationalmotocrossmuseum.org. You can get yourself some really great swag there. They've got sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats, clocks, all sorts of things. And I just learned recently that motorcycles are being moved over to the new building that will be the home of the International Motocross Museum. My guest today is Coty Schock. We are talking about his career as a professional motocrosser and supercross rider, as well as his passion for the vintage bikes. We were talking about your early career, how you got going. Very humbly, you explained to me that you didn't always finish all that well when you went out there on the national circuit. Tell me this, Coty, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions people probably have about life on the road racing as a professional? We all see it on television. We walk through the pits. Big tractor trailers, mechanics in fancy shirts, girls walking around in rock star outfits. We see what all that's like. But behind all that glitter has got to be a pretty tough life. Tell me what you feel are some of the things that people think Supercross is about, and what you know it's about from the belly of that beast?
Yeah, so I feel I can relate to this on both sides of the totem pole. I've
Sure.
gone to it as a full privateer, and I've done it as having a full ride. Um, a lot of people probably think it's like glamorous, like, oh, like we're in the stadiums or racing. There's a lot of money on the line, blah, blah, blah. As much as it is that way, it's not. It's not. This sport is very cutthroat. It's brutal. If you're not inside the top 10, you're not really doing anything. And if you are outside the top 10,
When you say, Coty, when you say cutthroat and brutal, are you talking about out there on the track, or are there politics involved off the track that can get kind of messy?
I would say probably the politics more than anything. Obviously, every racer never wants to lose. So on the racetrack, that's one thing. When I say politics, I mean like one person can discriminate you from your results versus like this person, and everyone has a different story, and it's all about selling your viewpoint to this person on why you deserve this chance. And it kind of just like keeps going, like everyone has a different story and everyone has a different path. And for me personally, my path is not traditional by any means. A lot of people's paths are not traditional. But for me, I was told I had to go to school.
Right.
Going to school was a priority for my parents. And then after I went through elementary, middle school, and high school, they said, you're going to go to college. Where a lot of kids, I can't say kids, a lot of guys I race with never went to college. They went pro and chased their dream and lived on the road. So for me, racing, Supercross, and outdoors, it is a wonderful lifestyle, but it's also very mentally and physically draining.
Yeah.
Your wins are very.
You mentioned earlier. You mentioned just a couple of minutes ago that you rode as a privateer, but you also rode as a sponsored rider as well. Who was your sponsor at that time? How long were you a privateer for?
So I was a privateer for, let's see, 16, 17, 18, 19, 4 years. I was a privateer. And
that's with no help from anybody, no other support other than the winnings that you were making, or how were you staying out on the road? I mean, between fuel and food and keeping a truck going, and your bike, it always needs parts. How do you survive out there for 4 years as a privateer? Who's helping you?
A lot of it was family and friends. My parents, they did sacrifice a lot, but they never put our home at risk. They would always push for my sister and I to have the best things as possible that they can give, but they never put it in a risk. Like, oh, we have to sell a car, we have to sell the house, or get another mortgage. Like there was a limit.
And a lot of families do that, don't they?
Yes. More families than you would actually think. They would sell their personal cars, and they would refinance their home, and then build up credit card debt. Like, it's insane what people go through for this sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. It's a lot. It's never ending. I had family and friends help me out, and so, like, little local businesses would throw in like $1,000 or $500 here. And like, being a privateer, it proves to yourself that you can do a lot with little. And sometimes you have to go deep into a hole before you start climbing out. And that's kind of what we did. So for me personally, I was racing only outdoors when I was full privateer. I was going to college. I did that for 2 years. I have my CAD degree, my associate's degree in CAD, I should say. And after that, I told my parents, like, I'm going to chase my dream. So that's when I moved to California in the winter of 2019, going into 20.
Mhm.
And I ended up finding myself with FXR Chaparral Honda with Michael Lindsay when he made that team. And
Right.
then I had some more support. I wasn't collecting a salary, but I was having bikes, parts, entry fees covered. It was like full factory, but with no salary. So the
Yeah.
only money I was making was from racing. So any of my bonuses I would keep. And that's kind of where it started. And then I started producing some better results. And then I had a really good year in 21, which led me to become on the Phoenix Honda racing team for the beginning of 22. And then I got hurt. So I wasn't able to fulfill anything after that. And then I got re-signed for this
So
year.
Coty, you were doing West Coast 250 at that point? Just West Coast 250?
No, so technically, no. It was weird. It was during the COVID year that I was racing the 250. So a
Right.
lot of the COVID races, we called them residencies. They were on the East Coast, but it was for the West Coast series. But we were racing on the East. Yeah, it was weird.
Gino?
So then I landed myself with Phoenix. I raced with Phoenix last year, a little bit last year, and then this year, and then didn't get renewed. But we can get into that. But
all right, I got to give a plug to one of my sponsors, Coty. We'll be back in just a second. Full Circle Racing still has a special going on for 18, 19, and 21-inch rims, just $775. Send your hubs up to Tom McAllister. He'll bead blast them, powder coat them, send you back a brand new set of wheels, new hoops, spokes, nipples, laced and trued, ready to go for just $775. Thank you, Tom McAllister at Full Circle Racing. My guest is Coty Schock, and we're talking about life on the road as a privateer and how difficult it can really be sometimes. Hey, Coty, how much does it cost to actually enter a race? If you want to get into a supercross race, how much does that cost?
So for your license, it's about $500, I think, for outdoors or supercross.
Now, is that every year? You got to get a license every year, or one time and that's it?
Yes, you have to renew your license every year.
Okay.
And then an entry into one of the races, I believe, is $250 to $300. That's where they vary. So.
And then you have to drive to that race too, and get yourself there. And I mean, do you have a mechanic also? Who's working on your bike, Coty?
My mechanic. Pending if I bring somebody on board to the team or if the team supplies a mechanic. Right. But yeah, I mean, a lot goes into it. People don't think about if you fly. You have your airfare, then you have your hotel, then you have your rental car. Like, that's almost $1,500 in 3 days for one race, plus your entry fees.
Yeah,
and you're not even counting food. You haven't even eaten yet.
Yeah, I go through it it's just like this weekend at Langston's or any other event where I'm the MC. It's by the time I get on a plane, get a hotel room, and get some food, and the event's on a Saturday, you get there on a Friday, you leave on a Sunday, it's $1,500 minimum. And then, and of course, then again, you guys are out there risking life and limb doing what you're doing. The worst that could happen to me is I make a mistake on a microphone. It's not so bad. So anyway, you did the Supercross thing, and you also did a lot of the outdoors as well. Now that must be just as difficult, if not even more so, because that's every week. That's not just an East Coast, West Coast thing.
Right. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Outdoors is a different animal. Supercross, we kind of get spoiled, as in like you don't get that dirty, and you race like almost every other week. Some weekends are
Yeah.
back to back, so you get a little bit of a break. And the races are shorter. That's the nice thing. When it comes outdoors, you're racing for 2 30-minute motos plus 2 minutes or 2 laps. Sorry. So it ends up being like
Yeah.
35-minute motos, and you're out in 100+ degree weather, sun or rain, and it beats up on you. It beats up on the mechanic. It beats up on the bike. Like it is an absolute grind, and you have to be willing to get down and dirty and be in the mud pit, and it's insane.
Yeah, I know. I know it is. I've been following the sport for 50 years, so I know what that's like. At this point, I want to thank one of our sponsors, the York Swap Meet. Thank you, Bill Nazarod. We have a great event coming up this winter, January 21st. I will be in York, Pennsylvania, and at the dinner the night before for the Potomac Vintage Riders. Get your space now for the York Swap Meet. They sell out very, very quickly, and there are always some good guests that come out there as well. I remember last year, Martina Faltova-Cope was there, Barry Higgins. We've seen Warren Reed there in years gone by. But anyway, it's a great way to spend a Sunday at the York Swap Meet. Always a lot of great motorcycle parts for sale, and always some interesting characters out there as well. Coty, has there been a time where you've spent like weeks on end on the road where you don't get to go home, where you're following the series and you're just going from hotel to hotel?
No, I personally have not done that. I know a lot of people have, but I personally have not.
Yep.
When I was privateer with my parents, we would be in our motorhome, and with Delaware being kind of central for a lot of the East Coast outdoor grounds, we would just drive the 10 to 12 hours and then come home. So we didn't have to stay on the road. But when you're traveling like that, yes, I get to sleep in my own bed for like 2 nights. It still feels like you're on the road. I mean, because you're constantly packing and then leaving and then packing and leaving. Like it's back and forth a lot. Mentally, it can get draining, and physically, you're definitely drained because you're never resting. It's not just a hobby. Like this is a full-blown lifestyle. And yeah, I don't know why we do it. I don't know why, but we all love it. We're all sick in the head somehow, and it's what we love.
Well, yeah, it's something that, as you said, it becomes a lifestyle, and you're one of the fortunate young men in a way that your mom and dad are behind you. You have a motorhome. Your parents were very, very smart, thinking about your future too, and making sure you get an education. Because I've heard of a lot of stories here, and you talked about it earlier. I've heard of a lot of stories over the years where they go out, they get into huge debt. They take the kid out of school thinking he's going to be the next Jeremy McGrath or Ricky Carmichael. They got that kid on the road at 7, 8, 9 years old. He's at Loretta Lynn's. He's racing all summer. By the time that kid is 12 or 13, he is reading on a 7-year-old level, cannot really complete a whole sentence when it comes to filling out a form.
Yeah, they're almost burnt out by their 13, 14 years old. Like I personally believe that the parents that do this to their kids, they're not allowing their kids to be kids. Like you only get one childhood. I mean, when you're an adult, you're an adult. You're there for till end of time, you know? But a childhood window is so small. And that's one thing that my parents wanted my sister and I to have, is a normal childhood, and let us grow up to be who we want to be and not what we're forced to be. And I'll forever be thankful for that, because I see the potential in everyone, and I'm not forced to see things a certain way. My parents have always just let me like see how I want to see it. And fortunately, I have a lot of my mom in me. So I have a really big heart and I'm willing to sit there and listen. And I think that's why the whole falling in love with like the history of the sport has like a soft spot for me. It's because like if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have what we have now. And I feel like a lot of people forget that. It's like we have what we have now because of the past.
Yeah. Coty, we got to take a hard break. Hear from our sponsor, Vinco, who I know helped you out with your Honda. When we get back on the other side of this break, we'll talk a little bit more about the history and what you're looking to do to get some backing for the new season. We'll be right back.
Vinco, who already has a full line of vintage parts, now has air shocks that are an exact duplicate of the original air shocks so popular in the late 70s. So whether you're looking to build a full racer or museum showpiece, these shocks will give you that incredible 70s look and improve your bike's performance. These new air shocks are fully rebuildable with Vinco rebuild kits, and all shocks are hand assembled in the USA with all new components. Every component is brand new. Just like the originals, our air shocks are adjustable with 2 chambers, high and low pressure, giving you tremendous flexibility for settings of your bike suspension. The Vinco air shocks come fully assembled and ready for installation. Just add air or nitrogen. The kits include the manual and spacers. Visit Vinco.com to check out the air shocks and all that Vinco has to offer to help you get back on track and to keep that ride going.
Some great stuff going on at Vinco.com. They've got specials going on every week. Get over there, see what's happening. You know, there are over 2,000 products in their catalog right now. That's Vinco.com. Coty, you talked about the history of the sport. Let's just talk briefly or give me an idea of what are some of the things that you really learned to appreciate about the history of motocross.
I think technique is one thing that I've learned to love on how much more advanced we are today. And coming with being more advanced is the technology that we now have in our motorcycles. If you were to look at the different brands back in the day, you could tell that they were 2 completely different motorcycles. And obviously one was going to be better than the other. Whereas now today, all our bikes are good. Like you can be picky on what you want. And every bike that is sold today is for a certain type of rider, and you just pick a color and you go. There's no excuses now. It's pretty much all up to the rider to make that thing work or not.
Yeah. You had a sponsored ride here. You were with Phoenix Honda. You were on a pretty well-developed team. Tell us how long you were there. And, just tell me how you got that ride, first of all, and then we'll get into some other questions. How did it first come to be that Phoenix Honda picked you up, and how long were you there?
So I was on the FXR Chaparral Honda team in 2021, and that team unfortunately shut down. And as that door closed, Phoenix's door opened. And I wanted to stay on Honda. So I was in contact with David Eller, and it was pretty much, I went over there, met everyone at the shop. I was like, this is definitely a good spot to be. And at the time they had Kyle Peters on their team, and he had podiums that year in Atlanta. Yeah. So obviously I knew that the program was really good. So I was with Phoenix for about 2 years. 2 years, you could say. I raced 2 races in 22 with them, and then I got hurt, and then I was out for the season. So it's kind of hard to say that I was with them that whole year, because I was told, hey, when you get healthy, like call us and we'll figure out something. And I was like, okay. So then I got healthy, and then I was with them for all of this year. So about 2 years I've been with Phoenix, and which is why I'm here in North Carolina now.
Okay. It's been the same way in motocross for as long as I can remember. Different people come in. Some people, they have to make room on a team for a different type of rider. If my research is correct, I believe that a couple of you guys were let go from Phoenix to make room for Dylan Ferrandis. Is that correct?
Yes and no.
Okay, tell us about that.
So some part of the reason is because of results. Some of the guys didn't fulfill what David had wanted, as in like result wise.
Okay.
So it was just Cullen and I. And then when Dylan came on board, obviously that threw a whole new twist into things, and which is good. I mean, it's great for Phoenix's program. But obviously, as you know, with everything, if you get something new, something has to give. It can't just always be perfect. And unfortunately, I didn't make the cut. Part of it is result wise. Some would say that my top 10, I got 10th overall in 250 East. Some would say, oh, like you did your job. And like in a way I did. But with Dylan coming on board, I mean, there's new expectation, and it just wasn't enough. Obviously, with a new rider coming on board as well, there's new budget, and like I said, like a minute ago, with something new comes, something has to give, and there just wasn't enough budget, and I was let go. There's no hard feelings at all. I get it.
Okay.
It's how the industry works. And I'm fortunately, there's still enough time for me to try to figure something out. It's not like it's 2 weeks before the season starts. There's 10 weeks for me for the 250 East side. So yeah, it's all good. I get it. That's why I said the industry is cutthroat earlier, because when you think you've done enough, there's always more that you can do, and which every person thinks that. Like, you're never really satisfied with yourself. So for me, I want to do more, and I will get the opportunity one day to do more. And it's like I said, it's part of it. No hard feelings. I'm just happy that I now know, and we'll see him at the races. So it's all good stuff.
Coty, if you were to put a budget together and say, I need 2 bikes, I want to race, I don't know, whatever there are, 7 or 8 rounds of Supercross East, what are they, like 7 or 8 East or West? If you were putting a budget together and say, I need a van, I need 2 bikes, I need this amount of gear, I'm going on a road for this length of time, what does that look like budget-wise? Can you give me a dollar amount?
Yeah, dollar amount would roughly be probably about like 70 grand. And that's
70?
Yeah, 70.
Okay. And that's with you having your own van, or how does that work?
So that would be with me already having a way for my bike to be transported.
Okay.
Which I think I do have a way for that. Right. Fortunately, I know a decent amount of people in the industry that are willing to work with me. So without cutting corners and doing it the correct way, I think around 70 would be fair. And I'll be able to be successful with that. So we're obviously still trying to figure out details on everything. This just happened on Monday, so it's still very fresh, and I'm not trying to rush anything. So.
Okay. And when you say 70, I mean, it could be 2 people at 35,000. It could be 7 people at 10,000 apiece.
Yep.
It could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. While we are talking about sponsors, I got to give a plug to one of my favorite sponsors, Motion Pro. Still giving 20% off across the board on everything in their catalog except custom-made cables. 20% off everything at Motion Pro upon checkout. Put in the code MP9135. That's MP9135. That's to get 20% off the board at Motion Pro. What do you do when the motocross thing doesn't work out? Let's say it doesn't happen, Coty. What do you do for work? How do you keep yourself going? Because I think you just got engaged too, if you don't mind me telling everybody about that.
Yeah, I did. To be honest, I do have a plan B. I do.
Okay.
And that is to go work for some type of CAD office, like any type of civil engineering or mechanical engineering or architectural. Like I can do all that.
Right.
Is it what I prefer to do? No. What do I prefer to do? I want to race my motorcycle. But I know that they will come. But I would also like to maybe somehow get into development of bikes. Because obviously the bikes are going to constantly be changing. And with the bikes changing, you're going to need CAD. CAD is going nowhere. I mean, that's the software you use to make up a drawing and make the part, put in a CNC machine and see if it works. So I definitely could go to some companies inside the industry and work for them as well. So that's why I wanted to go to school, because I mean, in reality, dirt bikes are not going to be there forever. They will.
Right.
But as a
Yeah.
professional athlete, your window is very slim. So you always got to be ready for what's next. And when that day comes, I know I will figure it out. But till then, I'm just going to focus on being the best version of me, and that's as a racer and a future husband to supply for the family. And yeah, I mean, it'll all work out.
If people want to get in touch with you, Coty, how would they do that? Do you have an email? Do you have a website, Instagram? How can they get in touch with you?
I do. So I have an Instagram. It is Coty_Schock_. My Facebook is CJ_Schock. We're about to launch our website. For me, it's cotyschock.co. And then I have an email. It's cjschock@yahoo.com. And then, I have many resources for people to reach out. If you're wanting to help, I'm sure we can work some type of deal on getting you on the bike or the helmet or jersey or whatever. Even on social media, I could shout you out. Like, there's many ways. Also,
Coty, during when this interview is over, you'll be able to get back on and make a comment about your contact information, or I'll try and do it as well, being I have it as well. So we'll put it up there in the comment section if people want to get in touch with Coty Schock and try and help them out for the 2024 season. Coty, we're just about out of time for today. Is there anything that I forgot or anything that you would like to mention that maybe came to mind to you within the past hour? Is there anything else?
Yeah, there's one thing. So becoming family with Norm, he's almost like the grandfather I never had. And with Norm, I've met some really cool legends in this sport. I mean, obviously I got to meet you. It's been an honor. Gary Chaplin, Donnie Hansen. I mean, Tommy Croft. Tommy Croft actually signed my Elsinore, because that's the reason that we built the Elsinore, is for a replica of his practice bike back in the day. Yeah. So that was cool. And I will tell you right now, that bike is in my kitchen. The fiance doesn't like that we couldn't buy a kitchen table. We bought an island, but the bike had to go in the house, because that's artwork. And obviously, like, being around Billy Urban, and the names go on. Just knowing these guys and learning the history of the sport, it's cool on how it shows that no matter what the age difference is, when you have one love, you are all similar in a way. And it's just cool. I mean, it was awesome to be able to fly to California about a month ago for Austin Fortner's wedding, and Gary Chaplin and Norm Francis picked me and my fiance up, and like, who gets to say that Gary Chaplin picked you up, Like,
Yeah.
to consider him a really good friend, it's an honor, and it's cool. It's cool. I love all vintage builds, and I personally
Coty,
got my little. I personally got my. What's that?
Yeah, and you know what, Coty? We're fortunate to have a young guy like you that takes an interest in the history of the sport. And what's most impressive to me about this interview, because I only knew you so well before this, you really got your head on, and it's really, really straight too. Kudos to your parents for making you get an education, but you seem to realize that there is life after racing. It isn't the only thing in the world, and you're going to go on. But you got a chance to experience something that very, very few people ever truly did. So in many ways, you are a champion in many, many ways. And it may not be, a champion doesn't always wind up on the podium,
Exactly. I can agree to that. I'm just happy that with my dirt bike, it's shown me really cool places. It's met some of the best people in my life, and it lets me be me. And that's just something that not many people can say. So no, I'm forever fortunate.
Coty, thank you for being my guest today, and we'll have you back on in the future. We'll talk more. If maybe you'll build another vintage bike, huh?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. I want to thank you, Coty Schock, and good luck in the 2024 season. We'll be rooting for you for sure.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Coty. Coty Schock has been my guest today. It was really a pleasure to speak to a young man like that. I don't get to speak to young racers all that often, and it was really great to have him here on the show today. One of the segments that we have here on Vintage Motocross Q&A is the Moto Showcase section, and it's not always easy to squeeze it in while I'm doing an interview, so we're going to do it now. We've got a 1972 Mako that was sent in this week. It is a square barrel sent in to us by Mark Satterley. And Mark says, I found this Mako at a local vintage show in Pennsylvania. The bike was just a frame, fork, and wheels and engine. I always wanted to restore one when I raced one in the 70s. However, in 76, I opened up a shop called Track and Trail. I was never able to have the time to do that. Being now that I'm retired, I took the time and bought this Mako. I have over 100 hours invested in it. We rebuilt it from the ground up. No part was overlooked. The frame was stripped and it was repainted in the exact Mako silver. It has a Mikuni carburetor on it. The rest of the bike is custom painted in 72 Mako factory colors. The Mikuni really makes the bike run silky smooth, starts very, very easily. And obviously we have that famous Mako handling. This is a beautiful bike for show or go. Take a look at the photos. It will be on display at the York Swap Meet this coming January. Well, Mark Satterley, I want to thank you for sending this bike in to Vintage Motocross Q&A. I think it was Roy Vanderveer who actually brought this bike to our attention. But Mark Satterley, if you get a hold of me, get me your address. I will get you, I'll get you some stickers, compliments of vidco.com. We're going to take one more commercial break. We'll be back to wrap it up here at Vintage Motocross Q&A. Hey, it's Joe Abadi for Vintage Motocross Q&A. When you're replacing a cylinder or a gasket or doing a top end on your bike, many times it's very, very difficult to get to the nuts that are on the base. And you want to be sure that you torque those evenly whenever you change a top end. Motion Pro has come up with this great tool. It's the torque adapter, okay? You can put any size wrench in there and you can tighten it up. On the back is a 3H drive. You can put your torque wrench in there, get the wrench on the nut that's on the base of your cylinder, and make sure everything is torqued evenly. This is a great tool. I have one in the shop. We use it all the time. It comes with instructions as well. Go see your local dealer or get to motionpro.com. And don't forget, go over to Vintage Motocross Q&A to get a 20% discount on all Motion Pro tools. A lot of people have been out there over the years replicating fenders, seat covers, and different things for vintage motocross bikes. I have never known anyone to replicate more parts more accurately than Paul Parkinson Sr. at replicamotorcycleparts.com. He has an incredible array of parts there, from airboxes to chain tensioners, chain guides, all sorts of plastic and soft rubber parts for all of your vintage motocross bikes. The latest thing he's come out with is really blown everybody's hair back. It's this 1973, 1974 pickle silencer for the 74 Honda CR250 Elsinores. This is good for the 125 and the 250. Get a hold of Paul Parkinson Sr. at replicamotorcycleparts.com. That silencer is retailing for $595. $595. Paul Parkinson Sr., replicamotorcycleparts.com. Thank you, George Ackerman. George Ackerman is a supporter of Vintage Motocross Q&A. If you get a moment, get over to his Facebook page. The Moto Barn is in full swing. I was just down there about 3 weeks ago. The Moto Barn that is located in Rutherford Glen, Virginia, a beautiful facility. George has an open house every year. He has become a show supporter of Vintage Motocross Q&A. You can too, just like he did, just like Mike Chamberlain has. It is not that expensive. We'll get you a placard up on the board just like this, give you a plug every week. Thank you, George Ackerman and Mike Chamberlain, for your support of Vintage Motocross Q&A. This past week, I was the MC at the Langston Motorsports Bike Show. While I was there, I got to speak to a lot of friends, including Gary Chaplin, Tommy Croft, and I asked one Rex Staten if he would be a guest at Vintage Motocross Q&A. He said yes. It may be next week. It will definitely be in the near future. My guest will be Rocket Rex Staten. For now, that about wraps it up for Vintage Motocross Q&A. I want to thank all of our sponsors. Thank you, the viewers at home, for watching the show. Thank you, Coty Schock, and we wish you well in the 2024 season. Don't forget to keep sharing the show, and we'll be back next week with more Vintage Motocross Q&A. You know what? I got him, and he's right here. I'm going to try it. Hey, Gino, come here. Come on. Come here, Gino. Come on, Gino. Come on, Gino. Oh, there he is. Okay. Thanks for watching the show. We'll see you next time on Vintage Motocross Q&A.